Discover the secret power of silence and transform your inner world forever. Have you ever noticed how the mind never truly rests? No matter how quiet your surroundings, there is a constant stream of thoughts, a gentle or sometimes fierce current of inner dialogue. It is as if the moment the world grows still, the mind grows louder, filling the silence with its own stories. Sometimes you call it thinking. Other times you call it planning, remembering, analyzing. But so often it is simply the echo of your ego, afraid of what might be revealed if all the noise were to fade away. The ego is a master of distraction. It fears emptiness. For in emptiness, you might finally see yourself as you truly are, without masks, without stories, without the armor of old beliefs. Sufi wisdom tells us, the heart does not speak, the heart only listens. It is either the ego or the divine that speaks, but never the heart. And yet how often do we follow every thought, every inner whisper without question? We doubt what we hear from the world, but rarely do we doubt the voice within. Every thought, every internal whisper we assume is true. But so often, it is not. It is just fear, just the residue of the past, just the anxiety of the future. It is the mind wrestling with wounds that have not healed, with desires that will not die, with fears that still loom large. And the quieter you try to become, the louder the mind seems to get. Why? Because the ego believes that if you fall silent, it will disappear. So it keeps you busy, analyzing, worrying, imagining 1,000 what? Ifs. It never lets you settle into the present, always dragging you back to the past or pushing you into the future. But the present is where the divine dwells. And when you truly meet the divine, the ego must retreat. It cannot stand in that light. So the mind speaks, exhausts you, makes you forget. It tells you stories that constrict your heart, that make you anxious, that fill you with doubt. But the voice of the divine does not tighten your chest. It does not make you anxious. It does not frighten you. It awakens you. It's gently, quietly. The divine whispers, it does not shout. And most often, it speaks through silence. Those who come close to truth speak less. They fall silent, knowing that every word can be a veil, every explanation a step further away. Sometimes, silence is the highest form of prayer, but silence is not easy. It is like standing before a mirror with no escape, no excuse, no one else to blame. In that place, you either cry out for the divine or you run from yourself. There is a space inside you, a hollow you have never quite filled, and that emptiness, it speaks. When it speaks, you may not be able to bear it. So you turn on music, scroll your phone, text someone, do anything to distract yourself from that voice. But that emptiness, that space you run from, is your meeting point with the divine. Because the divine does not enter a crowded heart. The divine appears in the emptiness, arrives only in the silence of an unoccupied soul. When the mind becomes quiet, the heart begins to hear. Only when you stop speaking, not just with your mouth, but with the constant commentary inside, can truth be heard. And when truth arrives, it is not a sentence, it is not advice. Sometimes it's just stillness. But that stillness holds more wisdom than 1,000 books. That is when real transformation begins, because now you are no longer speaking. You are listening to everything, a leaf falling, a child laughing, the wind brushing past your cheek, and in all of it, you begin to feel the divine presence. But the mind does not want that. It wants to control, to explain, to label, to define. But real meaning only comes when the mind goes quiet. Every word is resistance. Every story is a form of escape. Every calculation is born of fear. And all of it pulls you further from truth. But when the mind becomes still, you no longer blame yourself. You no longer praise yourself either. You just are imperfect, searching, silent. And that is the closest the heart can be to the divine. But you cannot hear the divine, because every second a new story begins in your head. Every moment another past is replayed, another future imagined, and your heart, your beautiful, tired heart, waits like a lonely child in a crowded room, just waiting for you to be still, to listen, to understand, but you never stop, not with your mouth, not with your mind. But here's the secret. That voice inside you, it no longer speaks for you. It only speaks for your fears, for your pain, for everything trying to pull you away from yourself. But if one day you truly fall silent, first you will be uncomfortable, the mind will panic, a strange emptiness will show up, and you will mistake it for something missing. But it is not a void. It is the threshold of divine closeness. If you can cross that threshold, everything will change. You will change, because now it is not your mind that speaks. It is your heart that listens. And a heart that truly listens can recognize the voice of the divine without words, without sound, without echo. But until your mind grows silent, you will never truly hear, because the mind always interrupts. But if one day you truly fall silent, you will realize there is another voice inside you. One that has always been there, not to argue, but to awaken. And it was never gone. It was just waiting for you to finally stop. You ever truly mastered silence? Not just a pause between words, but a deep silence. No thoughts, no plans. No sentences formed, just sitting waiting. No voice comes, yet a profound peace spreads through you. If you have experienced such a moment, that was the divine's first gift to you. But what your heart hears is not a word, a lesson, or a piece of knowledge. It is a state, a presence, a gentle touch. The heart hears, but cannot speak. It is the essence of meaning itself. Therefore, the heart does not speak. It only turns towards. And when that turning begins, you no longer want to explain anything. You do not seek to understand. You just want to witness. Suddenly, a door opens inside you. You do not know when or how. But one day you realize there is another presence speaking to you greater than yourself, but the very one who made you. That presence is the divine. The divine does not speak with words, but enfolds you with being when the mind is silent. The heart is no longer empty. It becomes a place of divine unveiling. You are no longer empty, yet you are not full. You are open. And how much you open is how much divine light you receive. Revelation is as vast as the container. The more you are silent, the more you open, and the more you can hear. But if the mind interferes, that openness closes immediately, because the mind's greatest desire is to capture everything in a sentence. But the divine is not a sentence. The divine is not a formula. The divine is not certainty. The divine is becoming a flowing state. When your mind becomes silent, you join that becoming. You let go of control, meaning judgment. You become like water, not like a stone. A stone protects itself, but water flows freely, filling every space, taking every shape, yet its essence remains the same. So the heart becomes like water. Silence turns it into flow. And the divine flows wherever the divine wills. Where the mind is silent, questions lose their meaning. You no longer ask why or what next. You simply watch, simply notice. And that noticing is the very essence of worship. The greatest worship is to remain conscious. And consciousness is reached not through the mind, but through silence. When you become silent, you hear. But this hearing is not with the ears, it is hearing from the depths of the heart. Suddenly, you know things you have never been taught. You have not memorized them. You have simply felt them. That knowledge comes from the divine directly, and you enter that knowledge only through silence, not words, not reading, through stillness. Words are veils. Every word chooses one meaning and leaves the rest outside. But silence embraces all meanings. That is why truth hides in silence, not in words. Where the mind is quiet, a state rises from within. Sometimes it is tears, sometimes a deep peace. Sometimes simply eyes welling up, without a single word spoken. That moment is when your heart touches the divine, and that touch cannot be put into words. But you recognize it because it is not yours, yet it was made for you. Every soul carries a unique divine unveiling. No one else has yours. So your silence is unlike anyone else's silence. The door that opens in your quiet belongs only to you and what you see behind that door is what the divine is telling you, but you cannot explain it to anyone, because explaining lessens it. That is why the people of truth speak very little. Whatever they say falls short sometimes. Saying nothing means saying everything. The mind cannot understand this. The mind wants to explain, but the heart only wants to carry. Where the mind is silent, mercy is born. Mercy for yourself. Mercy for others, because now you no longer wish to fix anyone. You no longer wish to convince anyone. Everyone has their own path, and that path does not open until they become. Silent truth is open to all, but visible only to the silent. The mind speaks, but the heart recognizes. When you become silent and things begin to open inside, no, this is your inner door, and what lies beyond it has always been reserved for you. Alone, no one else can enter with you. You cannot reach it with knowledge. Only silence can lead you through. And once you pass through, the world will never look the same again. People will not seem the same. Time will no longer flow the same, because you will begin to hear the divine in everything. The mind may remain unchanged, but the one who sees has changed. You no longer look at the world. You turn to the one who shows it, and that turning is the greatest awakening. When the mind falls silent, a peace arises, but first a void appears, and that void is often frightening, because the stories your mind has told for years begin to fade away. Every sentence of self-blame, every thought that judged another one by one, they dissolve. You are left naked, without any excuse, without any protection, but that nakedness is not something to fear, because the divine loves you most in that very state. The servant comes before the divine naked, without knowledge in hand, without defense, only with surrender. At that moment of silence, ego tries to speak once more. It tries to scare you. It calls silence emptiness. It calls it loneliness. But it does not know that in that silence, divine is present, and being alone with the divine is deeper than any crowd. After a while, questions begin to cease. You no longer ask what will happen. You no longer doubt, am I doing right? Because a calm arises inside you, a calm that whispers everything is as it should be. That whisper cannot be put into words, but it is a sound only the listener hears. And you realize the divine has always been speaking to you, but you never stop talking. Your mind, in its noise, has drowned out the divine stillness. The heart hears not when ready, but when silent, because readiness is the mind's work, but silence is surrender. When you no longer struggle, when you no longer try to change things, when you simply accept what is, that is the heart's opening to the divine. And that opening transforms everything. Your fears begin to fade. Your jealousy loses its meaning. Your races become meaningless, because now you know you are enough with the divine. Silencing. The mind is not about thinking nothing. It is about laying everything down and finding yourself fully exposed. It's no longer burdened by the past, no longer anxious about the future. Only the present remains the center of the whole universe, the place where time is transcended, and the heart reaches timelessness only through silence. When the mind is silent, not only thoughts but desires quiet down. You do not say, let it be. You say, if it happens, it is beautiful. And if it does not, I do not lose my beauty. This is true knowledge beyond information. Knowledge speaks. But true understanding is silent, because true understanding is not something the knower carries. It is the state of being one with the known. You no longer carry knowledge. You have become the known. You are no longer the listener. You are the heard. And in that state, your speech belongs only to the divine. Because you have vanished, only the divine remains. Only the divine is seen. Only the divine is felt. From this point forward, you no longer strive to change yourself, because you have already transformed. You no longer fight your mind, because it has become a friend. You no longer resent your ego, because it is now a servant, and the world is no longer a burden, but a mirror. Every event teaches you something, every person shows. You yourself. Every silence reminds you of the divine. When the mind is silent, the heart becomes the mirror of truth. The one who looks into it sees their own depths. But in that depth, there is nothing but the divine. You too have vanished. You have dissolved. But this vanishing is not destruction. It is the very essence of truth, because when you disappear, the divine appears, and yourself melts into unity. This is not loss. It is reunion.